The autumn sunshine spilled through the tall windows of Westlake University's Student Center, casting long shadows across the worn wooden floors. It was Friday afternoon, and the large open space buzzed with weekend energy as students gathered in small clusters, laughing and talking about their plans. Zoe Jackson sat alone at a small table near the wall, nursing a cup of tea that had long gone cold. She'd been at Westlake for exactly 3 weeks now, and it still didn't feel like home. Transferring in the middle of her college journey had seemed like a good idea back when she'd received the scholarship letter, but now she wasn't so sure. Making friends as a junior transfer student was proving harder than she'd expected. Zoe pulled out her textbook, trying to focus on her nursing studies rather than her loneliness. The background noise of the student center faded as she lost herself in diagrams of the human heart. She didn't notice the group watching her from across the room. Near the entrance, 5 students huddled around a table cluttered with flyers for upcoming campus events. They were part of the Student Activities Committee, responsible for organizing most of the social events at Westlake. They were also known for their pranks. "That's the new transfer student, right?" asked Devin, a tall boy with glasses perched on his nose. "The one who got that big scholarship?" Paige nodded, twirling a strand of red hair around her finger. "Yeah, that's her."
Zoe something.
"She's in my biology class. Barely talks to anyone." "She seems so serious," added Liam, leaning back in his chair. "Always studying. Never comes to any events." "Maybe she thinks she's too good for us regular students," said Harper, the unofficial leader of their group. Her eyes narrowed slightly as she watched Zoe turn a page in her textbook. "Did you hear she's from that performing arts high school downtown? Probably thinks a regular university is beneath her talents." "I heard she was some kind of musician," said Tyler, the newest member of their committee. He was always eager to impress the others, especially Harper. "Really?" Harper's eyes drifted to the old piano sitting forgotten in the corner of the student center. "That gives me an idea." The piano had been a fixture in the student center for decades. Once grand, it now sat dusty and neglected. 3 of its keys didn't work at all, and the rest were so badly out of tune that the university had put up a small, out-of-order sign that most people ignored. The committee had been trying to get it removed for months, claiming it took up valuable space they could use for events. "Oh no," Paige said, recognizing the look in Harper's eyes. "What are you thinking?" Harper smiled, the kind of smile that never quite reached her eyes. "I think we should invite our serious scholarship student to play something for everyone." "But the piano's broken," Devin said, then paused as understanding dawned on his face. "Oh, exactly," Harper nodded. "Little Miss Perfect will sit down at that disaster of a piano and embarrass herself in front of everyone. Maybe it'll help her lose the attitude." "That seems mean," Tyler said quietly, but not quite quietly enough. Harper turned to him, one eyebrow raised. "It's just a harmless prank. Consider it an initiation. Everyone gets pranked at Westlake, it's tradition. Besides, she probably deserves to be taken down a peg or two." Tyler shrugged, not wanting to argue. "Whatever you say. So who's going to ask her?" Liam looked around at the group, all eyes turned to Tyler. "Why me?" he protested. "Because you're the new guy," Harper said simply. "And because she doesn't know your face yet." Tyler sighed but stood up. "Fine, but I'm just going to ask her nicely." "Of course," Harper smiled. "We're not monsters. Just tell her we heard she's musical and we'd love to hear her play something." Tyler hesitated, looking over at Zoe, who was still absorbed in her textbook. She didn't look stuck up or full of herself. She looked lonely. "Go on," urged Harper. "It'll be funny. Everyone will laugh, she'll learn to lighten up, and maybe she'll finally start coming to our events instead of being so antisocial." Tyler nodded and began walking across the student center. As he approached Zoe's table, he noticed details he hadn't seen from across the room. The slight furrow of concentration between her eyebrows, the way she mouthed words silently as she read, the simple silver necklace with a small piano charm that hung around her neck. "Hey there," Tyler said, stopping beside her table. Zoe looked up, startled. For a brief moment, something like hope flashed across her face before a more guarded expression took its place. "Hi," she said cautiously. "I'm Tyler. I'm with the Student Activities Committee." He gestured vaguely back toward the group, who were watching with barely concealed excitement. "We're always looking to get to know new students." Zoe closed her textbook slowly. "I'm Zoe. I just transferred here." "Yeah, I heard that," Tyler said. An uncomfortable feeling was growing in his stomach, but he pushed forward. Some of the other students mentioned you went to that arts high school downtown. Do you play an instrument? Zoe's face brightened slightly. Piano, actually. I've played since I was 6. Tyler's discomfort grew. She seemed genuinely pleased that someone was showing interest in her music. That's cool. Actually, we have a piano here in the student center. Really? Zoe looked around until she spotted the old upright piano in the corner. Oh, I hadn't noticed it. Yeah, it's been here forever, Tyler said, the lie catching in his throat. We were wondering if maybe you'd like to play something. You know, like an impromptu Friday afternoon concert? The hope that bloomed across Zoe's face made Tyler's stomach twist with guilt. She quickly tried to hide her excitement, but he had already seen it. Oh, I don't know. I haven't played in front of people for a while now, she said. But he could tell she was tempted. It's just a casual thing, Tyler assured her, even as he silently hoped she would refuse. Nothing serious. Zoe glanced back at her textbook, then at the piano, then at Tyler. I guess I could play something short. Great, Tyler said, forcing enthusiasm into his voice. He led her across the room, aware of Harper and the others watching eagerly. Other students in the center were starting to notice something was happening, and a small crowd was forming. As they approached the piano, Tyler saw the moment when Zoe noticed the out-of-order sign. Her steps faltered. Wait, is it broken? She asked, her voice dropping. Before Tyler could answer, Harper appeared beside them. It's just a little out of tune, she said sweetly. Nothing a talented pianist can't handle, right? Zoe looked uncertain. I should probably check it first. Oh, don't be so serious, Harper interrupted. It's just for fun, unless you're worried you can't handle it. The challenge was clear in Harper's voice, and Tyler saw something shift in Zoe's expression, a flicker of determination replacing the uncertainty. I can try, Zoe said quietly. By now, a substantial crowd had gathered around the piano. Word had spread quickly that something interesting was about to happen. Tyler could see students nudging each other, waiting for the show. He wanted to stop it, to tell Zoe the truth, but he remained silent as she approached the old piano. Zoe sat down on the bench, which creaked under her weight. She lifted the fallboard to reveal the keys. Some yellowed with age, others chipped or cracked. She pressed a few experimentally, and even Tyler, who knew nothing about music, could tell how badly out of tune they were. 3 keys in the middle made no sound at all when pressed. A few snickers came from the crowd. Harper was smiling, clearly pleased with how things were going. Devin and Liam exchanged amused glances, while Paige at least had the decency to look somewhat uncomfortable. Zoe's fingers hovered over the keys. The student center had grown quieter as more people turned to watch. Tyler could see her shoulders tense as she realized what was happening, that this wasn't a friendly invitation but a setup. He saw her swallow hard, and for a moment he thought she might get up and walk away. Instead, she took a deep breath and straightened her back. Her eyes closed briefly, and when they opened again, there was a quiet dignity in them that made Tyler's shame deepen. The room waited in anticipation for her humiliation. Some students had their phones out, ready to capture the moment. Harper's smile widened. No one, least of all Tyler, was prepared for what would happen next. Zoe's hands remained poised above the keyboard, her focus complete. The noisy student center seemed to hold its breath, and in that moment, looking at her sitting at the broken piano she'd been tricked into playing, Tyler saw something he hadn't expected to see. Not embarrassment or anger, but a strange, calm confidence that made him wonder if they'd made a terrible mistake in underestimating Zoe Jackson. Zoe's fingers descended onto the keys of the broken piano, and the first notes wavered through the student center. Immediately, she could feel everything wrong with the instrument. 3 dead keys in the middle range, several others that barely made a sound. The entire piano was at least a half-step flat, with some notes even further out of tune. A few laughs rippled through the crowd as the discordant sounds reached their ears. Harper crossed her arms, a smug smile playing on her lips as she watched what she expected to be Zoe's moment of humiliation. But Zoe didn't stop. Instead, she adjusted, her fingers dancing around the dead keys, finding a melody that worked with the piano's limitations rather than against them. Years of practice on her grandmother's old upright, a piano that had survived a basement flood and was never quite the same afterward, had taught her how to adapt. The laughter faded as Zoe continued to play. She started with something simple, a blues progression that could accommodate the piano's uneven tuning. Her left hand found the few bass notes that still resonated properly, while her right worked around the broken middle section. Tyler stared, his mouth slightly open. This wasn't going according to plan at all. Instead of awkward clanging and embarrassment, Zoe was somehow pulling music, real music, from the damaged instrument. "What's she playing?" Someone in the crowd whispered. "I think it's jazz," another answered, "but I've never heard it like this before." Zoe closed her eyes, letting her fingers find their way across the keyboard by feel alone. She knew this old piano was meant to be her downfall, a joke at her expense. The realization hurt, especially after weeks of feeling invisible on campus. But now, with every note, she felt herself becoming more visible than she'd ever been. The crowd in the student center was growing. People who had been heading out stopped, drawn by the unusual sounds. Some sat down on nearby chairs and couches. Others stood in small clusters, their conversations forgotten as they watched Zoe play. Harper's smile had faded. This wasn't supposed to happen. The scholarship student was supposed to fumble and flee, not command attention. She nudged Devon, who seemed equally surprised. "I thought you said the piano was broken," she hissed. "It is," Devon whispered back. "3 keys don't work at all and the rest sound terrible. I don't know how she's doing this." As Zoe played, her confidence grew. She transitioned from the blues into something more complex, a jazz arrangement she'd been working on for years, one that relied more on rhythm and feeling than perfect pitch. The broken piano couldn't stop her from expressing the emotion behind the music. If anything, its flaws added a raw quality that made her playing even more authentic. A group of music students who had been passing by stopped in their tracks, recognizing something special happening. One of them, a jazz bassist named Ricky, watched with growing appreciation. "She's playing around the dead keys," he said to his friends. "Do you see what she's doing? She's reharmonizing everything on the fly to avoid the notes that don't work." Paige overheard him and looked back at Zoe with new eyes. What had seemed like a foolproof prank was becoming something else entirely, a moment of unexpected beauty. The warm afternoon light streamed through the windows, catching the dust particles dancing in the air above the old piano. Zoe's fingers moved faster now, finding a groove that had several students nodding along. The harsh, out-of-tune notes somehow became part of the charm, like an old recording from another era. Tyler couldn't take his eyes off Zoe's face. Gone was the guarded, lonely expression he'd seen earlier. As she played, she seemed to transform, her features relaxing into something that looked remarkably like joy. He felt a wave of shame wash over him for his part in what was supposed to be her humiliation. Across the room, a professor from the music department had paused on her way out, coffee cup in hand, listening with growing interest. Professor Chen had taught piano for 15 years, and she recognized talent when she heard it, especially talent that could shine through such terrible conditions. Zoe didn't notice any of them. She was lost in the music now, her mind working several measures ahead, planning routes around the piano's dead spots. It was like solving a puzzle in real time, one she'd been preparing for her whole life without knowing it. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her memory. "Baby girl, you can't always choose your instrument, but you can choose what you do with it." Growing up, they couldn't afford a proper piano, so Zoe had learned on a second-hand upright with keys that stuck and pedals that didn't always work. Her grandmother would save for months just to have it tuned once a year. "Find the music in whatever you're given," her grandmother would say. "That's what makes you an artist." So Zoe had learned to work with imperfection, to find beauty in unexpected places. And now, faced with this broken piano and a room full of strangers who had expected to laugh at her, she drew on those early lessons. As her playing continued, the mood in the student center shifted. What had begun as a mean-spirited prank was becoming something memorable, something that would be talked about long after the afternoon was over. Liam, who had been recording the whole thing on his phone expecting to capture an embarrassing moment, kept filming, but for entirely different reasons now. This was too good not to document. Harper, seeing her prank completely backfiring, tried to maintain her composure. She hadn't counted on Zoe being genuinely talented, and she certainly hadn't expected the broken piano to become a showcase rather than an obstacle. "I don't get it," she muttered. "That piano is a piece of junk." Next to her, Paige was no longer even pretending to be in on the joke. She was watching Zoe with undisguised admiration, her foot tapping along to the rhythm. "She's amazing," Paige said softly. "I've never heard anyone play like that." The piece Zoe was playing reached a crescendo. She had found a surprising number of workable combinations among the functional keys, creating complex harmonies that shouldn't have been possible on such a damaged instrument. Her right hand jumped 2 octaves to avoid the dead zone in the middle, landing perfectly on a high run that made several listeners gasp. Professor Chen set her coffee down on a nearby table and moved closer, intrigued by what she was hearing. It wasn't just technical skill, plenty of students had that. It was Zoe's adaptability, her willingness to embrace the piano's limitations and turn them into strengths. That kind of musical thinking couldn't be taught. As Zoe approached the end of her piece, the student center had grown remarkably quiet, except for her playing. Even the usual background noises, the hiss of the espresso machine at the coffee counter, the distant slam of doors, the hum of conversation, seemed to have faded away. She finished with a gentle flourish, finding a final chord that worked with the piano's uneven tuning. As the last notes faded, there was a moment of complete silence. Then applause erupted. Not polite, obligatory clapping, but genuine, enthusiastic applause that filled the student center. Some students even stood, whistling and cheering. Zoe opened her eyes, looking startled, as if she'd forgotten anyone else was there. A flush spread across her cheeks as she realized everyone was clapping for her. That was incredible. "How did you do that on this piece of junk?" "Do you know any more?" The questions and compliments came from all directions. People who had never noticed Zoe before were suddenly eager to speak with her, to learn her name, to hear more music. Tyler stood frozen, watching as the room transformed around them. The prank that was supposed to isolate Zoe had instead brought her into the center of campus life in a way no one could have predicted. Harper pushed through the crowd toward the piano, her expression unreadable. For a moment, Tyler worried she might say something cruel, might try to salvage some fragment of her original plan. Instead, she stopped a few feet away, watching as students surrounded Zoe with questions and praise. Professor Chen approached the piano, waiting for the initial excitement to die down before introducing herself to Zoe. "That was quite impressive," she said when she finally had Zoe's attention. "I've been telling the administration for years that we need to replace that piano. But now I'm almost glad they didn't listen. I don't think we would have discovered your particular talent otherwise." Zoe's eyes widened as she recognized the professor. "Thank you, Professor Chen. I've heard about your classes. And I'd like to hear more from you," the professor replied. "Would you stop by my office next week? I think we should talk about some opportunities in the music department." As Zoe nodded, clearly overwhelmed by the turn of events, Tyler finally found the courage to approach her. The guilt he felt was almost physical now, a weight pressing down on his shoulders. He reached the piano just as Professor Chen walked away, promising to email Zoe with more details. The crowd around the piano had thinned somewhat, though many students lingered, hoping for another song. "Zoe," Tyler began, not quite sure what he was going to say. I didn't know." She looked up at him, and he was surprised to see no anger in her eyes, just a quiet assessment. "You didn't know the piano was broken?" She finished for him, her voice soft but direct. "Or you didn't know I could actually play?" Tyler swallowed hard. Somehow her calm question was worse than if she'd been angry. "Both, I guess. I'm really sorry. This wasn't my idea, but I still went along with it, and that was wrong." Zoe's fingers trailed across the old keys lightly, not pressing hard enough to make a sound. "This piano reminds me of the one I grew up with," she said. "It was damaged in a flood before I was born, but it was all we had. My grandmother taught me that sometimes the most interesting music comes from working with what others might consider broken." She looked up at Tyler, her expression thoughtful. "I think maybe I was supposed to learn that lesson twice." The next morning, Zoe woke to the unfamiliar sound of her phone buzzing with notifications. Rubbing sleep from her eyes, she grabbed it from her nightstand and squinted at the screen. Her social media accounts, barely used since she'd transferred to Westlake, were suddenly active with friend requests, messages, and tags. "What in the world?" she murmured, sitting up in bed. She opened the first notification and found herself looking at a video. The thumbnail showed her at the piano in the student center. With a mixture of surprise and apprehension, she pressed play. There she was, playing the broken piano, her face lost in concentration. The video had been shot from an angle that captured both her and the growing crowd. The sound quality wasn't great, just phone audio, but it was good enough to hear what she'd done with the damaged instrument. The caption read, "Transfer student turns prank into pure talent." Wait for the crowd reaction. The video already had hundreds of likes and dozens of comments, all positive. Who recorded this? Zoe wondered aloud, checking the username. It was someone named Liam. The name sounded familiar, one of the students from yesterday, part of the group that had set her up. She scrolled through the comments, her heart beating a little faster. This is why you should never judge a book by its cover. The way she works around those broken keys is insane. Does anyone know her name? Is she giving lessons? Asking for myself, lol. Westlake Music Department needs to give this girl a scholarship. Zoe set her phone down, unsure how to feel. On one hand, it was strange and a little unsettling to see herself online, to know that people she'd never met had watched her play. On the other hand, the comments were kind, kinder than anyone had been to her since she arrived at Westlake. Her phone buzzed again with an incoming call. It was a number she didn't recognize. Hesitantly, she answered. "Hello? Zoe? This is Professor Chen from the music department. I hope I'm not calling too early." "No, not at all," Zoe said, sitting up straighter. "I was already awake. I'm glad to hear it. I wanted to speak with you before my day gets busy. That performance yesterday was quite remarkable. Have you had formal jazz training?" Zoe laughed softly. "Not really. My grandmother taught me the basics when I was little. After that, I mostly learned from records and YouTube tutorials. We couldn't afford regular lessons." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "That makes what you did even more impressive. Listen, Zoe, I'd like to invite you to sit in on my advanced jazz piano class on Monday. It's a small group, just 5 students, all very talented. I think you'd fit right in." Zoe's grip tightened on her phone. "But I'm not a music major. I'm studying nursing." "You don't have to change your major to take a few music classes," Professor Chen said. "Many of our best musicians are studying other fields. Music is for everyone, not just music majors." "I don't know." Zoe hesitated. "My schedule is already pretty full with nursing courses." "Just come to one class," the professor urged. "Monday at 2 p.m. Tanner Hall, room 105. No pressure, no commitment. If it's not for you, no hard feelings." After a moment, Zoe agreed. "Okay, I'll try one class." "Excellent. I'll see you Monday." "Oh, and Zoe, that video of you playing is making quite a stir around campus. You might want to prepare yourself for a bit of attention." After hanging up, Zoe flopped back onto her pillow, trying to process everything. Just 24 hours ago, she'd been invisible on campus, just another face in the crowd. Now there was a viral video of her playing piano, and a professor from the music department was inviting her to advanced classes, and it had all started with a prank meant to humiliate her. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from an unknown number. "Hi Zoe, this is Tyler from yesterday. I got your number from the student directory. I'm really sorry again about what happened. Some of us are meeting for coffee at the campus cafe at 11. Would you want to join? I owe you at least a coffee for being such a jerk." Zoe stared at the message, conflicted. Part of her wanted to ignore it. These were the same people who had tried to embarrass her in front of everyone. But another part, the part that had been lonely for 3 long weeks, was tempted by the invitation. Before she could overthink it, she texted back, "Okay, see you at 11. The campus cafe was busy with Saturday morning customers when Zoe pushed through the door at 5 minutes past 11. She scanned the room, suddenly nervous. What if this was another prank? What if they weren't even here? Then she spotted Tyler waving from a corner table. He wasn't alone. Paige was there too, along with a guy Zoe recognized as the one who had filmed her playing. Liam, she remembered. The only one missing was Harper. Taking a deep breath, Zoe walked over. "You came." Tyler stood up, looking genuinely pleased and a little surprised. "I wasn't sure you would." "I almost didn't," Zoe admitted, taking the empty chair he offered. "I wouldn't have blamed you," Paige said. "What we did was really mean." Liam nodded in agreement. "Total jerk move. But for what it's worth, I'm glad it happened because otherwise I might never have heard you play." He held up his phone. "Hope you don't mind about the video. It's got almost 1,000 views now." "I saw it this morning," Zoe said. "It's weird seeing myself online." "I can take it down if you want," Liam offered immediately. Zoe considered this. The video was embarrassing in some ways. It showed her being set up, after all. but it also showed her overcoming that setup, finding beauty in a bad situation. "No, it's okay. You can keep it up." Tyler returned from the counter with 4 coffee cups on a tray. "I didn't know what you like, so I got you a latte. I can get something else if you want." "Latte is fine, thanks." Zoe wrapped her hands around the warm cup, still feeling slightly awkward. "So, where's Harper today?" The other 3 exchanged glances. "Harper's not coming," Paige finally said. "She's not exactly happy about how things turned out." "She's embarrassed," Liam added bluntly. "The prank backfired, and now everyone's talking about how amazing you are instead of laughing at you like she planned." Tyler winced. "Way to be subtle, Liam." "What?" "It's true," Liam shrugged. "Harper's got this thing about being the center of attention. When you stole her spotlight by being awesome, she couldn't handle it." "I wasn't trying to steal anyone's spotlight," Zoe said quietly. "I was just playing the piano." "That's the point," Paige said. "You weren't trying to be the center of attention. You just were naturally because you have this incredible talent. Harper's been trying to be the star of this campus since freshman year, and you did it without even trying." Zoe took a sip of her latte, considering this. She'd spent so many years being overlooked, the quiet girl at the back of the class, the one no one noticed, that the idea of being in any kind of spotlight felt foreign. "I got a call from Professor Chen this morning," she said, changing the subject. "She invited me to sit in on her advanced jazz class on Monday." "That's huge," Tyler exclaimed. "Professor Chen is super selective about who she lets into her advanced classes. I told her I'm not a music major, but she said it didn't matter." "It doesn't," Liam confirmed. "My roommate is in engineering, but he plays cello in the orchestra. Westlake's music program is open to everyone." "Are you going to go?" Paige asked. Zoe hesitated. "I think so. I'm nervous, though. I haven't had formal training. After what you did with that broken piano, I don't think that matters," Tyler said. "You know what my dad always says? Training teaches you the rules, but talent teaches you when to break them." As they continued talking, Zoe felt some of her nervousness fade. These students, who just yesterday had been strangers trying to embarrass her, were now sitting with her, drinking coffee and chatting like they'd known each other for ages. It was strange how quickly things could change. After about an hour, Liam checked his watch and announced he had to leave for a study group. Paige left too, heading to her part-time job at the library. That left just Zoe and Tyler. "I should probably get going too," Zoe said, gathering her things. "Before you go," Tyler said, "I wanted to apologize again properly. What we did was cruel, and I'm really sorry I went along with it." Zoe studied his face, looking for signs of insincerity but finding none. "Why did you go along with it, I mean?" Tyler sighed, running a hand through his hair. "It's not a good reason, but I'm new to the committee. Harper's been running things for 2 years, and everyone just follows her lead. I wanted to fit in." He grimaced. "Pretty pathetic, huh?" "Not pathetic," Zoe said. "Human, we all want to belong somewhere. Still, I should have stood up to her. Said something? Maybe. But then I might never have played that piano, and Professor Chen wouldn't have heard me, and we wouldn't be sitting here now." Zoe gave him a small smile. Sometimes good things come from bad beginnings. Tyler looked relieved. "So you don't hate me?" "I don't hate you," Zoe confirmed. "But if you ever try to prank me again, all bets are off." They both laughed, and the last of the tension between them dissolved. As they walked out of the cafe together, Zoe noticed several students looking her way, whispering and pointing. "The video must have been making the rounds. Looks like you're going to be a campus celebrity," Tyler observed. "I doubt that," Zoe said. "They'll forget about it by next week." But even as she said it, she wasn't so sure. Something had shifted yesterday, not just in how others saw her, but in how she saw herself. For the first time since arriving at Westlake, she felt like maybe, just maybe, she could find her place here. Tyler checked his phone. "I've got to head to the gym, but I'll see you around campus?" Zoe nodded. "Yeah, see you around." As she watched him jog off toward the athletic center, Zoe took a moment to appreciate how different she felt today compared to yesterday. The loneliness that had followed her around campus like a shadow had lifted, at least a little. Her phone buzzed with another notification. Another comment on the video, another friend request, another reminder that she was no longer invisible. With a smile, she put her phone away and started walking back to her dorm, humming the jazz tune she'd played on the broken piano. the tune that had changed everything. Monday afternoon arrived faster than Zoe expected. She stood outside room 105 in Tanner Hall, her heart pounding as she checked the time on her phone. 1:55 p.m. 5 minutes until Professor Chen's advanced jazz piano class. Through the door's small window, she could see 5 students already inside, gathered around a sleek black grand piano, nothing like the broken upright in the student center. They looked relaxed, confident, laughing together as one of them played a complicated riff. These were serious music students, probably with years of formal training. "What am I doing here?" Zoe whispered to herself, clutching the folder of sheet music she'd hastily printed from free online resources the night before. She'd stayed up until 2 a.m. practicing in the dorm's basement lounge, where an old but functional piano sat largely unused. Just as she was considering walking away, the door opened and Professor Chen appeared. "Zoe, I thought I saw someone out here. Come in, please." The professor's warm smile made it impossible to refuse. Taking a deep breath, Zoe followed her into the classroom. The 5 students turned to look at her, their conversations fading. "Everyone, this is Zoe Jackson, the pianist I told you about." Professor Chen gestured for Zoe to join them. "Zoe, meet the Monday afternoon jazz ensemble. This is Andy on bass, Rita on drums, Damon on saxophone, Lee on trumpet, and Violet on piano." They all nodded or waved, looking at her with undisguised curiosity. "You're the one who played the broken piano in the student center," Violet said, recognition dawning on her face. "I saw the video. That was incredible." "Thanks," Zoe replied, feeling her cheeks warm at the praise. Lee stepped forward, hand extended. "Anyone who can make that old wreck sound good deserves a medal. We've been trying to convince the university to replace it for years." "Actually," Professor Chen interjected, "I had an interesting meeting with Dean Williams this morning. It seems the video of Zoe's performance made its way to several alumni who were quite impressed. One of them has offered to donate a new piano for the student center." "Seriously?" Andy's eyebrows shot up. "All because of one video?" "Sometimes the right performance at the right time can make all the difference," Professor Chen said with a smile. "But enough about that. We're here to make music. Zoe, why don't you sit next to Violet at the piano? Today we're working on improvisation over standard chord progressions." For the next hour, Zoe found herself immersed in a world she'd only dreamed about. The students were talented, yes, but also welcoming and eager to share what they knew. Violet scooted over on the piano bench, making room for Zoe and pointing out notation marks on the sheet music. "Professor Chen uses these little symbols to show where we can improvise," she explained. "See these brackets? That means the chord structure stays the same, but you can play whatever melody feels right." Zoe nodded, trying to absorb everything. "At my grandmother's church, we never used sheet music at all. She would just call out the key and everyone would find their way." "That's real jazz," Damon said with approval. "Reading music is important, but listening and feeling, that's where the magic happens." As they worked through the piece, each taking turns to improvise over the chord progression, Zoe began to relax. When her turn came, she hesitated only briefly before letting her fingers find their way across the keys, building a melody that complemented what the others had played. When she finished, there was a moment of silence before Rita let out a low whistle from behind the drums. "Where have you been hiding?" she asked, twirling a drumstick between her fingers. "We could have used you last semester when we performed at the winter showcase." "I just transferred here a few weeks ago," Zoe explained. "Well, you picked the right time to show up," Lee said. "The Spring Jazz Festival is coming up in 2 months and we're still working on our lineup." Professor Chen, who had been listening from the side of the room, stepped forward. "That's actually something I wanted to discuss today. The festival committee has asked our ensemble to prepare 3 pieces. I was thinking Midnight Blue for the opener, Autumn Leaves as a showcase for the soloists, and for the closer," she looked directly at Zoe, "I was hoping we might feature what you played on that old piano in the student center." "With the full ensemble backing you, of course," Zoe stared at her. "You want me to play with the ensemble?" "At the festival?" "Only if you're interested," Professor Chen said carefully. "It would mean committing to weekly rehearsals with the group in addition to your regular classes." "But I don't even know if I can recreate what I played," Zoe protested. "It was mostly improvised because of the broken keys," Damon grinned. "That's what makes it perfect. Jazz is all about adaptation and improvisation. What you did with that broken piano, that's the essence of jazz." The other students nodded in agreement, and Zoe felt a surge of belonging she hadn't experienced since leaving her old school. "Can I think about it?" she asked. "Of course," Professor Chen said. "Take a few days, but know that everyone here would be delighted to have you join us." She checked her watch. "That's all the time we have for today. Remember, practice the transitions in measures 20 through 35 for next week." As they packed up their instruments, the other students exchanged phone numbers with Zoe and added her to their group chat. It was such a simple thing, but after weeks of eating alone and studying alone, being included felt like a gift. "We usually grab coffee after class," Violet said as they left the room. "Want to join?" "I'd love to," Zoe replied, "but I have a nursing lab in 20 minutes. "Next time, then," Rita called over her shoulder. Walking across campus to her lab, Zoe felt lighter than she had in weeks. The nursing building came into view, and with it, a reminder of why she'd come to Westlake in the first place. Her grandmother had always stressed the importance of a stable career, especially for girls like them, as she put it. Music was a gift, a joy, a ministry even, but nursing was security. "You can always play piano on the side," her grandmother would say, "but a nursing degree means you'll never go hungry." The memory sobered Zoe as she entered the lab and took her place at one of the stations. How could she balance nursing school with jazz ensemble rehearsals? Was she being foolish to even consider it? Her phone buzzed in her pocket. A text from Tyler. "How was the jazz class? Still coming to the committee meeting tonight?" Zoe had almost forgotten her promise to attend the Student Activities Committee meeting. After coffee on Saturday, Tyler had invited her, saying they needed more creative people on the committee. "It was great," she texted back. "And yes, I'll be there. 7 p.m., right? 7 p.m. in the West Commons. I'll save you a seat." Far from Harper, Zoe smiled at that last part. She still wasn't sure how she felt about joining the same committee that had tried to humiliate her. But Tyler had been so earnest in his invitation, insisting that they needed to balance out Harper's influence with people who actually care about building community. The lab instructor called the class to attention, and Zoe tucked her phone away, refocusing on the task at hand, learning to properly take blood pressure readings. For the next hour, she immersed herself in the world of medicine, practicing with her lab partner until they both got consistent readings. By the time evening came around, Zoe had attended 3 classes, eaten a quick dinner, and changed into a fresh sweater before heading to the West Commons for the committee meeting. She arrived a few minutes early, but the room was already half full. Tyler waved from a table near the door, pointing to an empty chair beside him. "You made it," he said as she sat down. "I said I would," Zoe replied, setting her bag on the floor. "I know. But I thought you might change your mind after, well, everything." Zoe shook her head. "I've spent 3 weeks avoiding getting involved in anything on campus. Look where that got me. Time to try something different." Across the room, Harper was engaged in intense conversation with another committee member, pointedly not looking in their direction. Paige sat nearby, caught Zoe's eye, and gave a small wave. Liam hurried in at exactly 7 p.m., dropping into a chair across from them. "Sorry, almost late. Was helping Professor Chen set up for a faculty recital." He noticed Zoe and grinned. "Hey, Tyler said he invited you, but I wasn't sure you'd actually show up." "Everyone keeps saying that," Zoe laughed. "Do I seem that antisocial?" "Not antisocial," Liam corrected. "Just selective about where you spend your time, which is smart, honestly." The meeting was called to order, and Zoe found herself genuinely interested as they discussed upcoming events: a cultural food festival, a charity fun run, and plans for the end-of-semester celebration. When the topic of entertainment for these events came up, Tyler nudged her. "The music department always performs at the big events," he whispered. "You should talk to Professor Chen about getting involved." "I already did, sort of," Zoe whispered back. "She invited me to join the jazz ensemble for the spring festival." Tyler's eyes widened. "That's huge. Are you going to do it?" Before Zoe could answer, Harper's voice cut through their conversation. "Tyler, Zoe, something you'd like to share with the whole committee?" All eyes turned to them, and Zoe felt her face grow warm, but instead of shrinking back, she straightened in her chair. "Actually, yes," she said clearly. "I was just telling Tyler that the music department is preparing for the spring jazz festival. It might be good to coordinate with them for the end-of-semester celebration, since many of the same performers will be involved in both." There was a moment of surprised silence before the committee chair nodded thoughtfully. That's an excellent point. Zoe, would you be willing to serve as our liaison with the music department for this? Harper's expression darkened, but Zoe didn't look her way. Instead, she found herself nodding. I'd be happy to help, she said. As the meeting continued, Zoe's mind raced with possibilities. The nursing student who played jazz piano, the transfer student finding her place, the girl with the broken piano going on to perform at the spring festival. Her phone buzzed with a text from her grandmother. How's my girl doing at that fancy school? Looking around the room, at Tyler's encouraging smile, at Liam's thumbs up, at the committee members who now looked at her with interest rather than indifference, Zoe typed her reply. Better than I expected, Grandma. I think I might finally be finding my way. 2 months passed in a blur of classes, rehearsals, and committee meetings. Spring had fully arrived at Westlake, painting the campus in bright greens and colorful blossoms. Students lounged on the lawns between classes, soaking up the warm sunshine after the long winter. In the music building, final preparations for the Spring Jazz Festival were underway. Zoe sat at the grand piano, her fingers dancing over the keys as the ensemble played through Midnight Blue one last time. The piece had become second nature to them after weeks of rehearsal. Beautiful, everyone, Professor Chen said as they finished. Zoe, that embellishment in the bridge was perfect. Keep that for tomorrow. Zoe nodded, making a note on her sheet music. After 2 months of working with the ensemble, she'd become comfortable adding her own flourishes to the arrangements. The other students had encouraged her to trust her instincts, to play what felt right rather than just what was written. Let's take 10 minutes, then run through Zoe's piece one more time, Professor Chen announced. As the others set down their instruments and stretched, Violet slid onto the piano bench beside Zoe. Nervous about tomorrow? She asked. Zoe laughed softly. Terrified might be a better word. There's going to be so many people. Just pretend you're back at that broken piano in the student center, Violet suggested, playing for no one but yourself. That's actually good advice, Zoe admitted. When I didn't know anyone was filming, I wasn't nervous at all. Across the room, Damon was adjusting his saxophone reed while chatting with Lee. Did you see they're finally installing the new piano in the student center today? He called over. About time, Rita responded from behind her drum kit. The festival committee wanted it in place before all the alumni arrived for tomorrow's performances. Zoe felt a wave of disbelief wash over her. So much had changed since that Friday afternoon when she'd been tricked into playing a broken piano. Now, because of that moment, a brand new piano was being installed. And tomorrow she would perform her own composition with the jazz ensemble in front of hundreds of people. Earth to Zoe, Andy waved his hand in front of her face. You zoned out. Thinking about your adoring fans? More like wondering how I got here, Zoe said honestly. 2 months ago, I didn't know any of you. I'd never performed in front of an audience now. Now you're our secret weapon, Lee finished with a grin. The crowd's going to go wild when they hear your piece. Before Zoe could respond, Professor Chen called them back to their positions. From the top of Zoe's composition, please. Remember, this is the closing piece of the entire festival, so we want to leave the audience with something special. As they played through her composition, a piece Professor Chen had helped her formalize from her improvisation that day, Zoe couldn't help but smile. The melody that had emerged from necessity, from working around broken keys, now soared with the full backing of the ensemble. What had been a solitary act of adaptation had become a collaborative creation. After rehearsal ended, Zoe packed up her sheet music and checked her phone. A text from Tyler was waiting. Committee voted unanimously to name you official pianist for all major campus events next year. Harper abstained but didn't vote no. Progress. Zoe smiled at the message. Her relationship with Harper remained tense, but the open hostility had faded to something closer to grudging respect. Last week, Harper had even complimented her idea for the fall welcome event, though she'd quickly followed it with several suggestions for improvement. As Zoe left the music building, she noticed a small crowd gathered at the student center across the quad. Curious, she headed over, only to find Tyler directing a team of students who were arranging chairs in a semicircle. Zoe, he called when he spotted her. Just in time. They're about to unveil the new piano. She moved closer, surprised by the number of people present. There were students she recognized from classes, professors from various departments, and even Dean Williams, who rarely attended anything smaller than graduation. "What's going on?" she asked Tyler as he joined her. "I thought they were just going to install the piano and that's it." "That was the original plan," he explained with a grin. But then Professor Chen suggested something a bit more ceremonial. "The donor is here and they want to officially present the piano to the university." "The donor is here?" Zoe felt suddenly nervous. "Who is it?" Before Tyler could answer, Professor Chen approached them, accompanied by an elegant older woman with silver hair and kind eyes. "Zoe, I'd like you to meet Mrs. Eleanor Reynolds, class of 1972 and one of our most generous supporters of the arts at Westlake." The woman extended her hand with a warm smile. "So you're the young lady who made such beautiful music on that old wreck of a piano. I've watched that video at least a dozen times." Zoe shook her hand, feeling slightly overwhelmed. "It's an honor to meet you, Mrs. Reynolds." "The honor is mine," the woman replied. "You reminded me why I fell in love with music in the first place. It's not about having the most expensive instrument or the most prestigious training. It's about finding beauty wherever you can, even in imperfection." Professor Chen nodded toward the center of the room, where a large object stood covered with a blue velvet cloth. "Mrs. Reynolds has donated not just any piano, but a restored Steinway from the 1930s. It has tremendous character and a beautiful tone." "We considered buying a brand new one," Mrs. Reynolds explained. "But after seeing what you did with a broken piano, I thought something with a bit of history, something with its own unique voice, would be more fitting." The dean stepped to the front of the room and called for everyone's attention. After a brief speech about the importance of the arts at Westlake, he invited Mrs. Reynolds to join him. "When I saw the video of a student turning what was meant to be a prank into a moment of pure musicality, I knew I wanted to be part of what happened next." Mrs. Reynolds said to the crowd, "This piano is dedicated to all the students who find their voice here at Westlake, especially those who must overcome obstacles to be heard." With that, she pulled away the velvet cloth to reveal a stunning grand piano, its deep mahogany wood gleaming under the lights. A collective ooh rose from the crowd. "To properly inaugurate this new addition to our student center," the dean continued, "we've asked the talented student who inspired this donation to play the first notes." All eyes turned to Zoe. Professor Chen gave her an encouraging nod while Tyler whispered, "Go on. You've earned this." Heart-pounding, Zoe made her way to the piano. Unlike the last time she'd approached a piano in this room, there were no pranks, no tricks, just a room full of people who genuinely wanted to hear her play. As she sat on the bench, she ran her fingers lightly over the keys, feeling their smooth, responsive action. This instrument couldn't be more different from the broken upright she'd played 2 months ago. Taking a deep breath, she began to play, not her jazz composition or any classical piece, but the simple gospel tune her grandmother had taught her first, the one they used to play together on their old flood-damaged piano at home. The rich, full sound of the Steinway filled the student center. Zoe closed her eyes, letting the familiar melody transport her back to her grandmother's living room, to Sunday mornings at church, to all the places where music had been her constant companion and comfort. When she finished, the applause was immediate and heartfelt. Mrs. Reynolds had tears in her eyes as she joined Zoe at the piano. "That was beautiful, my dear. What was that piece?" "Just an old hymn my grandmother taught me," Zoe explained. "It was the first thing I ever learned to play." "The perfect choice," Mrs. Reynolds said. "Every piano should begin its life in a new home with something meaningful." After the ceremony, as people mingled and took turns admiring the new piano, Zoe found herself surrounded by her new friends from the jazz ensemble and the student committee. There was laughter and excitement about tomorrow's festival, plans for next semester's events, discussions about summer internships. "There she is," a familiar voice called out. Zoe turned to see Harper making her way through the crowd, looking uncharacteristically hesitant. The others grew quiet, curious about this unexpected interaction. "Harper," Zoe acknowledged, unsure what to expect. "I just wanted to say," Harper began, then paused, clearly finding the words difficult, "that I'm sorry about the prank. It was mean and childish and—" She gestured toward the beautiful new Steinway. Clearly the universe had other plans. The apology, though slightly grudging, was sincere. Zoe could see the effort it took. "Thank you," she said simply. "I appreciate that." An awkward moment passed before Harper added, "Your piece for the festival tomorrow, it's really good. I've heard the ensemble practicing. You should come," Zoe found herself saying. "To the festival, I mean." Harper looked surprised by the invitation. Maybe I will. As Harper walked away, Tyler leaned close to Zoe. That might be the closest thing to humility I've ever seen from her. People can surprise you, Zoe replied. I think I've learned that better than anyone these past 2 months. Later, as the crowd thinned and the afternoon sun cast long shadows across the student center, Zoe found herself alone at the new piano. Professor Chen approached, taking a seat beside her on the bench. You've come quite a way from that first day, the professor observed. It doesn't seem real sometimes, Zoe admitted. All of this from a mean prank, Professor Chen smiled. The prank was just the circumstance. What you did with it, that was all you. You could have walked away embarrassed, angry, defeated. Instead, you sat down at a broken piano and made something beautiful. Zoe ran her fingers over the keys, barely pressing them. My grandmother always said music finds a way no matter what obstacles are in its path. Wise woman, your grandmother. She is, Zoe agreed. I was thinking, I still want to be a nurse. That hasn't changed. But maybe I can be both, a nurse who plays jazz piano. A healer who makes music. Why not? Professor Chen smiled. The world needs both healing and music, often in the same places. As they sat together in the fading afternoon light, Zoe felt a deep sense of belonging wash over her. The path forward wasn't entirely clear yet, but she no longer felt like she had to choose between the practical future her grandmother had encouraged and the musical passion that had always lived in her heart. Tomorrow she would perform at the festival. Next week she would take her nursing exams. The summer would bring new challenges and opportunities. And through it all, music would be there, finding a way, just as it had that day at the broken piano, when a prank meant to embarrass her had instead revealed to everyone, including herself, exactly who she was meant to be.